Hey everybody, this is a quick video on how to use CSS Transforms declarations with CSS Animations. And this video is not about really how to do complex animations. This is more about just tying the transforms attributes in with that. So I'm going to show you a few different things that you can do, but I am going to give you a really quick crash course on how CSS animations work. So I've got here this box set up with the class .box1. So I have its background color set to dark blue and then some dimensions for it. And I've also set up this pseudo class, which is .box1:hover, which explains the animation and sets that straight. So whenever this is basically saying that whenever I hover over the class .box1, which is this is going to be triggered. It's going to trigger this animation called example. The animation duration is going to be 2 seconds. And the animation iteration count, which is basically just how many times it does it, it's going to be infinite. I've just got it on a loop. You can put whatever integer you want in there, or you can just put infinite. The next step with setting up an animation is setting up what's called the keyframes. So you do @keyframes, then the name of the animation right here, and then you're going to open brackets. So this whole thing is contained in these brackets for this. And basically what the keyframes does is just sets a timeline for what happens during the animation. So this is just one I set up for this example, that the background color will go to light blue at 25%. 50 goes to teal, 75 green, 100% at dark green, and then it'll loop back around to dark blue and so on. So just to show you that whenever I hover over this, it triggers this animation and it just cycles through these colors. So that's basically just kind of how animations work in a nutshell. It's just a really basic example. For this example, I'm just going to be using 50% and the brackets within that because it provides a nice you'll see with the transforms, it basically will transform to 50 and then it'll just slide back to 0% basically for 100. So the first one that we're going to go over is called translate. So we're going to do transform:translate. And the first one we're actually going to go over is translateX. So this will translate your element along the x-axis. And if you enter a positive integer within that, it's going to push it 200 pixels to the right. And you can see if I sit here and hover over it, it's just going to loop. And so you may think, oh yeah, it's the x-axis, which is, going this way. Y-axis is going this way. It's a positive number, so it's going to the right. But really, it's just pushing off of the left. And if you enter a negative integer, it will do exactly what you think. It will go to the left instead. And it makes sense for the x-axis because it's negative. If you think about a typical x and y, negative, positive. But if you think about a y-axis, if you're thinking about mathematics, y is positive and this way is negative. But it's not really how it works with translateY. You got to think about it as terms of like pushing off of the top and pushing off of the left. So if you put in a positive number with translateY, it's going to push it down. And so you just kind of have to think about it that way. If you're trying to translate something, you're trying to move it down 200 pixels on the y-axis. And same thing with y. If you put in a negative number, it's going to bump it right up. So what you can also do with translate is you don't have to do x or y, but you can just set them both, and it would be x integer, comma, y integer. So let's set them different so you can see that it's going to translate 200 pixels to the right and then down 100 pixels whenever we hover over it. And so you can see it just does them both at the same time. Just kind of slides them over. Now if we wanted to, we can mess around with the animation. We could have it go down, over, up, whatever, by using the 25, 50, 75%, whatever percentage you wanted to do. You could have it, go really smooth like that. But since they're both at 50, it's just doing them both at the same time. The next one is called rotate. And it does just what you think. You could do just rotate. You can see just rotate with the parentheses there. If we did 90 degrees, it's going to just spin it basically how you would think, just like that. So it spins it along. But the thing about rotate is, remember, this is the x-axis and this is the y-axis. So whenever we go to do rotateX, something interesting is going to happen. It's actually going to rotate along this way, and so it's going to spin backwards like that. And so you really can't even see it. It just kind of goes flat, flips down like that. And so if you did 180 degrees, it would totally flip upside down by the time it flips, and then it flips back. So if that makes sense, it's kind of spinning on its x-axis right now. And if you set this to y, the y-axis is up and down, it's going to do this nice flip motion, which you can use for cards. If you want somebody to hover over a card, have this nice flip motion as they hover. It's spinning along that y-axis. And you can also do rotateZ, which is essentially the first one. The Z-axis is going within the page and then coming out towards your face. You can't really see it. It's kind of hard to imagine, but it's that third dimension that it's sitting there, and this is spinning along the Z-axis. But you don't have to put the Z in there. You can just leave it as rotate. The next one is called scale, and what scale does is makes it basically bigger or smaller. And so you can do scaleX, which will, oh, sorry, it's just like an integer. So if you do scaleX and then 2, it'll make it twice as big along the X axis like that. So it's going to stretch it out and then it pushes it back in. So stretches it like that. You can also do 0, and that would just make it totally shrink and disappear. You can do negative numbers, and it does kind of like rotate along the Y axis, but it is also going to like flip and then stretch. So it's scaling it negatively, yeah, so it's flipping it and then stretching it. You know, same with Y, scale Y, kind of looks like it says scaleY, but it's stretching it along the Y axis there. And you can actually just do the one called scale, and it'll do scale on X, comma, scale on Y. So we'll do 1.5 for Y. And then as you do that, it's getting 2 times bigger on the X and then 1.5 times bigger on Y. And to just kind of make it a little bigger example here, so you can see 5 times is pretty big. Woo, there it goes. And so this is pretty handy, you know, for just making something you want it to just kind of gradually get bigger as you hover over it. You can just kind of have that, you know, see how it just kind of pops out. You're hovering over it. Neat little animation to do just to kind of get attention that, oh, hey, I've hovered over this and it does something. And then the last one's called Skew. I don't really use this one all that much, but you do skewX to skew something along the x-axis. So you put in your degrees, 45 degrees, and you can see it's just going to skew it, going to make it lean like that. You can do skewY. We'll do the same thing, but just along the y-axis. Whoop. And this one's the same. You can put in negative numbers, and it will skew it the other way. And then you probably guessed it, there's also just a skew that is X comma Y. I'll do both of them. Wow. So that's all the transforms right there. Let me know if you guys have any questions or comments. Go ahead and throw them down there, and thanks for watching.